Hey YouTube, glad to have you back. Today, we'll be talking about the recent disappearance of 22-year-old Riley Strain. For those who don't know me, my name is Blue, and I'm a police officer with 10 years of experience. Today, I'll do my best to outline the case for you from the beginning up to the most recently released information. I'll also try to explain our process for reporting and investigating missing persons cases, as well as my own thoughts on the situation. As a disclaimer, these are just my opinions and reflections based on my own training and personal experiences, and not the reflections of any department or organization. I would also like to say that in this case, as well as with many publicized and ongoing cases, there is a lot of conflicting information as it relates to certain details, but we'll do our best with what we have. If you like true crime related videos, feel free to subscribe, as I post at least weekly. With that said, let's get into the disappearance of Riley Strain. Riley is a 22-year-old college student at the University of Missouri. On Friday, March 8th, Riley traveled to Nashville, Tennessee, with his fraternity, Delta Chi, to celebrate a yearly spring event together. Riley is reported to have been staying at a nearby hotel called Tempo Hotel with his fraternity brothers. According to Riley's mother, he last FaceTimed her on the phone that same night, around 7:30, and reportedly sent her a text message around 7:45 p.m., with both of them saying they love each other. Riley appears to have gone next to a well-known bar in the area, called Luke's 32 Bridge, a bar owned by popular country singer Luke Bryan's. While here, it is reported that Riley had one alcoholic drink and 2 waters, which was confirmed by the restaurant who provided receipts. Early reports speculated that Riley was overserved, but according to these receipts, that does not appear to be accurate. Now, it is possible that he could have pre-gamed, a popular choice among people who go out and party. This is where they drink at their home or hotel prior to bar hopping, to save money on drinks while they're out. In either event, it appears that Riley was extremely intoxicated, enough so that the security staff would ask him to leave. In a statement released by the bar's security team, they say, "We made a decision based on our conduct standards to escort him from the venue through our Broadway exit at the front of our building." Anyone who has ever been to a big bar or club knows this is just a romanticized way of saying Riley was thrown out of the bar. Now, apparently one of Riley's friends was with him and followed him to the door, but did not leave with him. Some reports claim the reason is that he wanted to return to the bar and pay his tab before leaving, with others claiming he simply returned to hang out at the bar as was originally planned. Regardless, Riley left and began to walk away alone. It would be abundantly clear to anyone watching that Riley is not in a clear state of mind, and he appears to be heavily intoxicated. We'll see more on that in a minute. But before we continue the timeline, let's talk about a few things. Firstly, this is not an uncommon thing by any stretch of the imagination. People routinely have too much to drink at bars, and if their conduct becomes unacceptable, as happens with drunk people, they are just as routinely kicked out. However, Riley appears to be beyond just being a disorderly type of drunk. Just minutes after leaving the bar, he is stumbling and falling over, and can hardly keep his balance. He appears drunk to the point of needing medical intervention, in my experience. If I had run into someone who was as intoxicated as Riley, as I very often do, it's a common practice to have our medics come and look at them, just to make sure they're not suffering some type of medical emergency, or even alcohol poisoning. If they pass that stage, we then try our best to get them home, only if we can leave them in the care of a family member. In the absence of that, we try to determine if the person meets the criteria for what in Florida is called a Marchman Act, or in some areas known as a Myers Act. The Marchman Act provides for either voluntary admissions or involuntary assessment, stabilization, and treatment of adults and youths who are severely impaired due to substance abuse, and who may suffer from substance addiction. Had Riley run into law enforcement that night, or if the bar had called them, he may have gone to the hospital, jail, or back to the hotel with friends to watch him. Instead, he is still missing. Now, I have heard some people theorize that he appears drugged. It is very possible, as it's a popular practice to combine drugs like pills with alcohol. It's also just as likely that Riley could have been drugged at the bar, but would likely have been disclosed as it would have been easy to see on bar cameras. In either event, I do wonder what the bar was thinking by letting someone so drunk just walk away. So, back to our timeline. Riley apparently tells friends he is going back to the hotel, but reportedly begins to wander in the wrong direction. Hours later, all his friends return to the hotel, but are unable to locate Riley. Most likely due to them being both intoxicated and making assumptions that he was somewhere else, no one actually reports Riley missing until approximately 1:46 p.m. on Saturday, nearly 16 hours later. Now, here's how this goes down, normally. A police officer will respond to gather as much information as possible. Once he has a good grasp on all the facts, he reports it to his supervisor, who contacts detectives. Detectives, depending on the criteria, will respond immediately or follow up at a later date. This depends on whether a person is considered simply missing or missing and endangered. A missing person could be someone who did not return home after a vacation, or a teenager who habitually runs away. Some examples of an endangered person are a child under 12 who runs away or goes missing, any person with a severe mental health issue like dementia, or anyone who goes missing under mysterious circumstances, like a mother who doesn't return home after work to her teenage child. There is an often talked about misconception that you must wait 24 to 48 hours to report someone missing. This is absolutely untrue, as you can report someone missing immediately. This remains from an old era of policing, where many departments did require this if the person had not gone missing under suspicious circumstances. We have learned from the delay in investigating missing people as it relates to serial killers, such as Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and John Wayne Gacy. In this case, detectives get to work immediately, as 16 hours have passed and the circumstances on the night of Riley's disappearance show that he was extremely drunk and in an unfamiliar city, unaccompanied. So detectives begin by checking cameras in the area, as this strip has numerous businesses, and we can actually follow Riley around town if enough cameras were recording. So what do they see? Well, at 9:45 p.m., 10 minutes after being kicked out of the bar, Riley was seen stumbling and running down the sidewalk in a parking lot of 3rd Avenue and Church Street. Approximately 2 minutes later, Riley is again seen on a separate camera crossing 1st Avenue North to Gay Street. Again, it is abundantly clear to anyone watching that Riley is not in a clear state of mind, and he appears to be heavily intoxicated. Police see Riley walking, stumbling, running, and even falling in several different cameras, and see the general direction that he's walking. But when the camera footage runs out, they use another investigative technique and ping his phone. Pinging a person's phone shows us where someone's phone is currently, within a given area, or where it was last when it was on. In Riley's case, between 9:55 p.m. and 10 p.m., his last phone ping was near James Robertson Parkway and Gay Street. Detectives said this was also the time of the last known phone conversation he had with one of his friends. This pinged area is an area of approximately 2 miles, so it did not provide a clearer picture of where he ended up. What it does tell police is that Riley was still in the area when his phone died, was turned off, or was destroyed. Looking back at the videos of Riley that night that have been released, notice how he is extremely intoxicated, so much so that people around him surely know how drunk he is. Imagine if they had called the police to check on him. We would likely be having a very different conversation right now, or perhaps not one at all. But let me offer an opposing view, if I may, of the choice to not get involved these people made that night. If you live in an urban area, you see heavily intoxicated people all the time, like nightly. Many of them are homeless, and if you're unfortunate enough to have a rehab center in your city, you'd notice that in many cases, younger, fairly well-dressed people are seen as well. People who live in these environments get used to it, and normally get used to the police doing nothing about it, primarily because the police can't do anything about it. So, they just get used to it and it becomes a normal part of city life, which is unfortunate for everyone, and even more so for Riley in this case. On Monday, police posted to X, asking for any information the public might have. Remember, police are only as good as the community we serve. We rely on everyone in our community to help us solve crimes and find missing people. Police would go and interview everyone, starting with Riley's friends and the bar staff, and interviewing neighboring businesses. On Wednesday, March 13th, police and agents from the Office of Emergency Management searched the nearby rivers, using boats equipped with sonar. Now, in my time as a cop, I've also been a part of the underwater search and recovery team for about 6 years now. When I hear something like this, I know undoubtedly they are searching for a body. In all honesty, the absolute most likely thing that happened to Riley, based on his own intoxicated state and the area he was last seen in, is that he stumbled into a river and was not able to swim, drowning. This is just based off my own experience, and this is not at all an uncommon reason to find a deceased person in a body of water. With that being said, there may be another reason behind his disappearance. It would eventually be reported that Riley had wandered through a homeless encampment. This is an area where numerous homeless people set up a camp, normally in a hidden, off-the-beaten-path type area. If Riley wandered through here, it is also very likely that he would have been taken advantage of. In my experience, homeless encampments are mostly filled with the mentally ill and drug addicts, both of whom are sometimes violent and often involved in crime. It is not a place you want to wander into alone at night while extremely drunk. At this time, police have claimed they do not have any reason to suspect foul play. But that is a far cry from claiming absolutely that Riley did not suffer foul play. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. That determination will most likely not be fully made until Riley is found, either safe or alive, or tragically deceased. And here's another theory being put forth. Riley may have called a taxi or ride-sharing app, such as Uber or Lyft. Police do not yet have full access to Riley's phone records, as these records take time to get back even after being served with a warrant. I'm not really sure why, but investigations would go much more smoothly if we had the ability to gain access to these records in a day or two with a warrant. If any of you remember Samantha Josephson, then you may have had the same thought. Samantha was a 21-year-old woman who got into a car she thought was her Uber and was murdered by the driver, Nathaniel Rowland. It would not be unbelievable to think someone as drunk as Riley would be an easy target for a criminal, even one who pretended to be an Uber driver. And finally, there's the last option. This could all be a hoax. In Alabama, in July of 2023, 25-year-old Carly Russell was believed to have been kidnapped after making a strange phone call, where she was last heard checking on a small child on the side of a highway. After several days, she returned home, but an investigation would later determine it was all a hoax. As a cop, my job has made me very cynical. I hope and pray that Riley is found safe, alive and healthy. I hope and pray that it's a misunderstanding, that Riley is maybe in a hospital somewhere with amnesia, but safe. I even pray that it's a prank, like we talked about above. But, if I had to give my best guess, with him still missing on the 9th day, and with all the circumstances we've named above, I think it's most likely he either drowned or was possibly met with some type of violence by someone he encountered. But I hope, as I often do, that I'm wrong. But who can we say is to blame for this? Is the bar? Or the people who didn't try to help him? What about his friends? In a case like this, we often ask, what if, and we try our hardest to assign blame to someone. If the bar overserved him, then they surely have a hand in what happened to him. If his friends chose to not make sure he got back to the hotel safely and leave him on his own, they also would share responsibility, just like the people who saw him on the street and chose not to get involved or call the police. But ultimately, assuming he was not drugged against his will, Riley himself will be to blame. We as humans have a tendency to put ourselves in risky situations that we know are unwise and assume that it's everyone else's responsibility to keep us from harm. Again, assuming he was not drugged against his will, Riley ultimately made the choice to drink to that extent, walk back alone to the hotel, and not call for help or a ride, at least as far as we know. Use this as a lesson to never put yourself in a situation that requires someone else to take care of your own well-being, and take the time to join the family and friends of Riley as they pray continually for a safe return. And that's all for this case, guys. I hope the video was informative and showed you a little more of the investigative side of this case. If you're new here, consider subscribing, as we post crime stories, both old and new, weekly. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments. I try my best to respond and take suggestions. If anything further develops in this case, I'll be posting a follow-up video to keep you guys informed and to try to give you a bit more of an insider look at these situations. And as always, guys, stay safe and stay tuned.